Welcome everybody to today's webinar. Our topic today, how to find unprotected electronic PHI. My name's Ray Kuhl. I'm CEO of PBSI Technology Solutions. I want to thank first our friends and partners at the Academy of Medicine for envisioning the need for IT and cybersecurity education. It's a group of folks at the Academy who really think carefully about how to communicate well and provide for clients and members what is needed. So, and thanks to each of you for joining. So we'll be quick today. I speak quickly anyway, so my apologies in advance, but I'll say if you are doing something else while you're watching, you may not want to do that because I'm going to move from topic to topic really quickly. So the security education series of which we're a part, we've already covered and have recorded, and we'll make recordings available to all registrants. Regardless of whether you've registered for each session, if you've registered for at least once, you'll get recordings and slide decks for each of these. So the topics that we've covered, security essentials, email training, file encryption, Dragon Medical, password management, each of those are really important topics, really useful content. Today, we're going to talk about how we can identify what risk we have on our network from patient information, primarily, that is unprotected. How can we find out? It's a difficult topic. Having been through that when we didn't have electronic tools to do it, I know how difficult it is. That's our topic today. Next, tomorrow we'll talk about end of life for Windows 7. It's an important thing every practice needs to understand. And then, so we put our security measures in place. How do we know it's all working? That's our final topic for this Thursday. Today, how to find unprotected patient information. So electronic PHI is stored on virtually every network and not every PC necessarily inside of a medical office. Our agenda today is short and sweet. What are the most common threats? Why are we protecting? Why do we want to know where our PHI exists? What are the most common threats that would have the potential to expose that information? Why would we care about protecting this information? Where do we typically find what is there on the network? What are the most important protections and defenses? And then I'll do a short demonstration of a tool that electronically uncovers unprotected information. Really, really useful, and our topic will be brief today. So some of you, thank you very much, have been clients and friends of PBSI for many, many years. Thank you. We have hundreds of physician and other provider clients in the greater Cincinnati area. And we've worked with the Academy of Medicine for many, many years as well. Thank you to each of you who have been our partner in experience services over a long period of time. For those of you, and there are some of you in attendance where this is your first exposure to PBSI, thank you for your attendance. I want to just quickly tell you that our role in this webinar series is simply to provide education. We're not trying to sell products or services. However, we certainly do offer products and services, and we provide discounts for Academy members. And probably the most important thing to understand that PBSI is an IT company with a focus on security and a focus on healthcare. And we have a large staff where the great majority of our staff have been with PBSI for at least 10 years. And as CEO, I'm very blessed to be able to say, I know experience helps clients, and it does every day. Now, our focus is IT security, and it's from the information that we learn on a daily basis that we accumulate information, and that's what we're presenting today. So first, what are the most common ways where electronic patient information is disclosed? So these are statistics coming from OCR, specifically for Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. And the largest single over a given period of time, I don't know what period of time was covered here, unauthorized access or disclosure. So unauthorized isn't really specific. It could be a staff member. It could be unauthorized access by a business associate. But unauthorized access would certainly be restricted if the information they're looking for is encrypted. I'll talk about encryption and exactly what that means, because that's really the focus of today's session, is to talk about we want to find unprotected or unencrypted information. Encrypted information has already been garbled, and HIPAA clearly recommends encrypting all patient information. And So a little bit more about that. But unauthorized access is the biggest risk. Theft of data, which you'd presume is intentional. Loss of data. Honestly, I'm surprised that loss isn't larger on this list, because in our personal experience, we find that losing laptops or losing thumb drives, oh my gosh, I left my iPhone somewhere, I think there may be some patient information there. That's not reflected in these numbers. Improper disposal. So improper disposal of thumb drives or backup cartridges or all kinds of things on which we're not really thinking necessarily that, hey, that's got patient information. We can't just, you may not notice, you can't just dispose of a PC. You must dispose of it in a HIPAA compliant way. We do this for clients all the time, where we take the PC back to PBSI, and generally speaking, we destroy the hard drive literally with a hammer. And then we provide a certification letter to a client that that PC or that laptop that you retired has now been properly disposed of, and then we recycle the material. So the other most common is a hacking or an IT incident, and these are the ones that send fear into all of us. We've had so many of these take place at client sites, and as soon as a client in a medical office has been attacked and there's been a ransomware or some other kind of incident where we've identified that a hacker's been present inside of a PC and inside of a network, the question turns very quickly to, do we need to report a breach? Oh my gosh, do we need to report to patients? What is our risk? In many situations, this has turned into a conversation. If we need to report a breach and send this data to all of our patients, our referring sources, we're out of business. The expense associated with this might be the end of our practice. So in all of this information, I'm not trying to promote fear, please no. What I'm trying to do is provide information so that we can take prudent measures. So these are the ways in which typically protected information is exposed. So why should we care about unprotected patient information when it's inside of our network? Hopefully we've secured our network. We have our firewalls in place to secure our network. We have antivirus on our PCs. We've done what we need to prevent attacks from happening. But the fact is, we don't know when that attack might happen. And that's really the bottom line to this information. Why should we care? Because we're not protecting against what's already happened. We're protecting against what might happen. A future hacker gets a hold of, let's say, my desktop PC or our billing manager's desktop PC, and then from there, they go to the server, they go other places in the network, and that's just the way this works generally. Once that future hacker, which might happen tomorrow or next week, gets hold of my PC and has access to the network, what can they find? And what could they steal? And that's basically the purpose of finding our patient information in advance, is to know what our risk is. So we're protecting against accidental exposure to employees. We hire a new employee, they inherit a PC that someone else used, and they all of a sudden find on the C drive all kinds of previous patient information where this employee was never intended to have access, but nobody thought about the unintended access that's being provided. So accidental exposure to and accidental exposure by employees, giving access to their brother-in-law who does IT, their PC in the office where there's no business associate agreement. The brother-in-law, who knows what the result of this accidental exposure. And then, of course, intentional exposure. This is more rare, but certainly it happens. And so what we're doing is, first, we're looking for all unprotected information on all of our PCs and servers. So I'm going to clarify, unprotected in the context of this entire conversation means unencrypted. When I have a file, a Word file, an Excel file, a PDF file, or my EHR database, those files are many times contain clear text. You open up a Word file, you know what that means. It's clear text. You can read what's there. When you encrypt a file, it garbles it so that only the person with the password that you give it, when you give a file a password, you have encrypted that file. Only the person with the password can open it. And once you have taken that step of encryption, then I'm going to call that information protected, because that file could be sent somewhere else and somebody couldn't open it because they don't have the password. So what we're looking for is what information exists on our network that is not encrypted. So we're protecting, we want to know where this information is so that we protect against future incidents that haven't yet happened. Really important to know, encrypting information is proactive risk management. So reducing the risk of HIPAA audit penalties. So we get a HIPAA audit, which is happening more and more, even in very small offices, and the auditor starts asking questions, and they ask, so where is your PHI? What protection measures have you taken? And if the answer is, what do you mean by PHI? Of course, hopefully we'll never say that, but well, you know, it's really difficult. I don't think we have any on our front desk. I don't think we have any on our billing manager's PC. Your HIPAA auditor is going to say, you don't know. Well, in fact, you were required to do a security risk analysis, and a part of that risk analysis, you were required to understand and report where you do have potential exposure, and already we're behind the 8 ball of a HIPAA auditor. Where on the other hand, if you're one of those really fairly low percentage of practices who can say, we've done a security risk scan, we know exactly where the PHI is, we encrypted all of the stuff that was important, and here on our transcription PC, we've chosen to, because that changes all the time, and we've made a decision, we're going to allow that PC to temporarily contain unencrypted information. Your HIPAA auditor is going to say, fantastic, you're thinking this through, you're doing just what you're supposed to. So we're not trying to eliminate all examples, we just want to know where the data is, what our risk is, and that we've thought about it. We're doing what's prudent. So we want to reduce the potential of needing to report a breach. If we need to report a breach, and anything over 500 patient records, you are required to post a breach notification on a public website. Hopefully you know what that is. You can ask us if you're not sure. But more than 500 records isn't a heck of a lot of records. Your billing manager downloads a report that's got diagnosis codes and procedure codes and social security numbers and date of birth, and all of a sudden that PDF file gets lost and there's more than 500 patients on the report. We now are required to report a breach if that file's been lost. Okay, so again, not trying to create fear, simply saying, we're reducing risk by understanding and then fixing what we find that is unencrypted. We're protecting against unintended exposures. That's where we lose the laptop, we lose the PC, and we're reducing risk that a future mistake will result in a requirement to report a breach. Okay. Where do we typically, when we do a network analysis and we provide this electronic search to look for all of the electronic unencrypted patient information, where do we find patient information? On servers, usually your practice management or your EHR, those are protected well. Vendors of EHR and PM systems know they need to encrypt those files. Well, those are low risk areas actually, but high risk areas are shared folders, where it's good to have shared folders on your server so that you're not storing documents on C drives. Your billing staff and your office manager and other folks are sharing policies and procedures and maybe some billing reports, shared folders on a server outside of your EHR database. Very, very common, and it's good. You simply want to know that it's there and make sure it's protected. We find related to servers backups. We find folders where the conversion data from our last practice management system or backups that our IT people created as a temporary backup before they did some procedure a year ago and 5 years ago. We find there are folders on servers that nobody knows are there, but in fact they contain lots of patient information. Not always, I'm just saying this is common. By far the most common place where we find unprotected data is on PCs and laptops. So transcription PCs or laptops, there's an ongoing process of provider and transcription, and that's expected and understood. So it doesn't mean that it's bad, it means we want to know where it is. Providers sometimes are the worst offenders at downloading information, and they think, well, I'm a provider, I have access to this, and of course that's true, but is that PC protected? Does anybody else have the ability to access it? Will they ever? Billing staff, very common. We produce reports for billing staff that include all you need in order to have something defined as PHI is you need to have a patient name associated with one or more identifiers. So you have PHI if you have a patient name and either a date of birth or a social security number and or an ICD code or a CPT code or a credit card number, any combination where the patient name can be associated with an identifier, you now have information that's required by HIPAA to be protected. We find, surprisingly, people don't think about this, patient information and email history, sent mail, deleted mail. We're not supposed to send or receive patient information. HIPAA requires that we do not use email for patient information unless it's encrypted. But even if we encrypted an email that we sent, it was encrypted on the way out to the recipient, but on our sent mail folder on our PC sits the stuff that we sent, still there. We deleted that 2 years ago, it's still there. And many times we find patient information there. Former employees, here's something that you may or may not know, but Windows now for years, whenever you hire a new employee, an employee leaves, the new employee comes in, you set up a username and password on that PC. Each username that's set up on a PC creates its own set of files. Just because you set a new username doesn't mean the old one goes away. So if Samantha used to use this PC, and she hasn't been here for 8 years, but now Judy uses this PC, Samantha's files, her login, any files that she stored, her sent mail, her deleted mail, they're all still there. And nobody even knows, nobody remembers that Samantha used to be here or that she had files. Is completely unexpected. So we don't typically know to go look there, and that's kind of the point. We have an electronic tool to look for these things because manually doing it just won't work. Recycle bins. You may know that whenever you delete a file, it really goes to recycle bin, and some PCs never get their recycle bins emptied. So it's a area where we just find tons and tons of old protected information. Easy solutions, just we need to understand before we solve the problem. Then we find wireless devices, iPhones, iPads, Androids. We find clinical devices. You may know that most copiers today have a hard drive, and anything that's copied is also stored on the hard drive. You can't just discard a copier. Now, the copier is generally not accessible, but many of us have network copiers, and so yes, it is accessible. And the hard drive that has photocopies of all the records we've sent through that copier in the last 2 years, they still sit there. Dictaphones, clinical devices, there are lots of places where you think, oh, I didn't even think about that. Well, no, that's why when you do a manual inventory, it usually doesn't turn up information in places like that. So when you do a security risk analysis, the whole purpose is you take an inventory, one of where is your electronic unprotected data stored. You take an inventory of people and processes, your policies and procedures, who's been trained. You look at the technology protection you have in place. And the part of this that most people get really well, the people and processes, okay, we have to have the policies, we have to have the training, we protect our equipment, we put antivirus into place. But the hardest thing to answer is where is our unprotected information stored. That's why I'm going to talk about this electronic risk analysis. If you have a security risk assessment, which each of us are required to do, who attest for, used to be meaningful use, now it's MIPS or macro, you're required to have this risk assessment, and it is required to include a summary of where is your PHI. So now I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. I've talked about why we need to look for it, and now I'm going to identify how we look for it. So I'm going to do a demonstration of the way PBSI does this. You may have a different EHR vendor. They may be able to do the same thing. So again, you don't have to use PBSI for this, but I'm going to now go and demonstrate both online security monitoring and electronic risk assessment, which shows us where PHI is stored. So what you're looking at now is the live dashboard at PBSI, where all of our clients are here along the left-hand side, and I can click on any client. In this case, I have clicked just on PBSI. So once I click on an individual client, over on the right-hand side, we see only the devices at the top of the screen that are used at that particular client. So I'm not exposing any other clients. Here on the top right-hand section are the servers at PBSI. So we have a lot of different servers that store a lot of different things. Then on the bottom of the screen, once I click on a particular server on the top, it displays all the details that we know about that server. So the whole idea of finding unprotected data starts with being able to have electronic access to each device on the network. So we have access to each server at PBSI, and for each server there's different information. So I'm going to pick this one server and just really quickly say, we know if the backup ran successfully last night, we know if there were any failed logins, so we can see security things. This is really inexpensive, by the way. We do this antivirus monitoring, $7 a month. We can see performance-related things. We can see security-related things. And what happens is there's an agent installed on each device on your network, and they automatically report every 15 minutes or every hour the status of all of these different things. They report it to a secure website, and that website reports the status of everything to the monitoring technicians at PBSI. So we don't routinely go in and say, how's this device? How's this device? No, what we do is we're paying attention. When I say we, I mean our technicians. I'm not a technician myself. And they're paying attention not just to what's going on at one client, but they generally don't select one client. They're allowing at the very top of the middle of the screen, this would be the most problematic device among all clients. So if there's a server who just failed, or one that just got a virus, or anything just happened with a server, or if a backup failed last night, it would be red instead of green, would come to the top, and then they would click that device and drill into, okay, let's see what happened. So the starting point of electronic inventory is electronic access. And it's really, really useful. And we track patch management, we track virus, we track all manner of vulnerability issues. And this is the starting point. So now I'm going to move, instead of servers, I'm going to move to workstations. Most of the action in terms of HIPAA and problems, they occur on PCs and laptops, not on servers. Servers, most of us have pretty well protected, and there aren't a lot of security problems with the server. PCs, however, different story. We know when each one was last rebooted, when it was last reported into the dashboard. You can see all of these dots. What we're looking for as a technician is we're looking for anything that's yellow or red. So Nathan has a yellow indicator under his antivirus. So if we wanted to go find out why, we would find out that he has a disk space issue, possibly. Okay, it's yellow. It's not a big deal. It's something we can easily take care of. But we're getting an alert at PBSI. So if Nathan were a client, we would be emailing him and saying, Nathan, here's what's going on with your disk space on your PC. Would you like us to look at your disk to see if we can delete any unnecessary files so you don't have to buy a new hard drive? So that's the basic blocking and tackling of monitoring. Now I'm going to search for my own PC. So I'm going to search for any PC at PBSI that has the name Ray in it. And so I have my Microsoft Surface, but I'm going to select my desktop. So the PC that I'm sitting in front of right now as I'm speaking to you, that's this one. So if I'm a PBSI dashboard technician, I can see things about Ray's PC, that Ray sitting in his PC, he's running Outlook and Excel, and he's doing his job, hopefully. And he doesn't pay attention to whether there's been failed logins, or whether his hard drive's filling up, or whether there are any performance issues, or whether there are any virus issues, or any backup failures, or any patches that need to be updated. But the dashboard technicians are monitoring all these things. And if there were a problem, Ray would be alerted by one of the technicians at PBSI, and they'd say, hey, Ray, we've already looked at this. We fixed a problem for you. Just wanted you to know. Now, that was easy. I'm happy to pay you $7 a month to provide my antivirus and do all of that. Okay, the specific thing I want to drill to, though, is not just regular monitoring. I want to drill to risk intelligence scanning. So here, for the first time, I'm going to demonstrate the entire reason for today's webinar. Every night I have my PC scanned, and it identifies what unprotected data shows up on my PC. And I wouldn't just go here and say, hey, is there any bad data on my PC? What would happen actually at the starting point is the technicians are paying attention to all of the PCs and servers across PBSI's entire client base, and we're getting an accumulation of all of the exposed credit cards and driver's license and social security numbers and dates of birth, and they can drill in. So there are 1,635 dates of birth exposed on all the devices put together. They can look and see how many of them are running Windows 10. So this is a big picture. We can see what's the most difficult unit or unit where there's most exposure on any PC, and there are 160 different issues on that PC that blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go any further into that, but the starting point of risk intelligence is a nightly scan that you can actually have this done one time when you're doing your risk intelligence, your security risk assessment. Find the data, fix it, document it, and then not do ongoing scans. At PBSI, we do ongoing scans, and most PCs never have any. So salespeople, support people, there's rarely any protected information that comes across their desk. But in a medical office, medical information comes across lots of people's desks. And every organization has somebody who's taking care of payroll, where there are social security numbers and dates of birth of employees. And so it's not just patient data, it's all protected data. So on Ray's PC, the scan last night found what it thinks is $402 worth of liability. That's not very much. We have PCs where there's $500,000 worth of liability on that PC because there might be, 15,000 patients with exposed information on that PC. Well, Ray's little $402, the technician can drill down here and say, okay, so how many files are exposed? In this case, there's just one file, and it is stored in Ray's OneDrive, not even on his C drive, and inside of a subfolder where there's a form here that in fact includes what appear to be 2 social security numbers. Well, you know what? That file exists there. That's my social security number and my wife's social security. It's not exposed, but because of the scan, I realized, oh yeah, I stored that on my PC, sent it to the bank, and I haven't removed it from my PC. Okay, thanks for the heads up. Now I know to remove that file. So we have PCs being scanned that have dozens of files and PDFs and Excel files, and anything that's not encrypted would show up. Then we know exactly what we needed to go do. We clean it up, get rid of the stuff that's not supposed to be there, and now we can say to ourselves and to our HIPAA auditors, we're clean. Our data is secure. So that is really the essential of what we call risk intelligence scanning. It's an electronic scan that you can run one time or run nightly, and it tells you exactly where your exposed data is all the way across your network, and then you can clean it up and set policies and procedures. The first step very frequently is, I had no idea that there were things in recycle bins and things in email history and so forth. But once you learn those, then you set policies, you clean up the data, and you've really made a huge step toward HIPAA compliance. Okay, we're almost finished with content. I wanted to show you there's an easy way to do that. In context, all of the defenses that we're talking about that a medical office really should have in place in order to be really paying attention and doing the right thing include protecting our email, protecting our PCs and laptops, having access control in place, identifying where our insecure data is, and that's what we just demonstrated: risk intelligence scanning, electronic asset management, network testing, vulnerability scanning, having an incident response plan, making sure our medical devices are protected and that our policies are in place. That's the big picture. Today, we looked at one little component of that, which is identifying where our exposed data is. So I hope this has been helpful. We're finished with content. And once again, I want to thank each of you for your attendance. I hope this has been useful. And I want to thank our partners at the Academy for sponsoring this. This screen identifies if you want to have a risk scan done, we can do this for a one-time fee, or you can do it ongoing for X dollars per month. And we can help with other security items, but that's not our point. But if you'd like a quote, contact us. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your membership in the Academy. Hope everybody has a good day. We're finished.